Some characters possess an ability so deadly and forbidden that they promise to never use it. Not because they're weak, but because using them just feels fucked up. But what happens when keeping that promise costs more than breaking it? And how about you? Yeah, you. When everything is at stake, would you break your own vow and use the one thing you swore never to use again? Well, Katara bloody did. The entire Avatar series shows Katara as arguably one of the most compassionate beings in all of the show. She's kind and caring, and unlike most of the fighters in the series, she seeks peace through morally sound methods. This is exactly why bloodbending is horrifying to her. If you aren't familiar with the series, bloodbending is a specialized technique of waterbending that enables the user to manipulate the blood of another individual within their body. Instead of controlling the water around you, you are in control of the individual themselves, their arms, legs, and their movement. The person being bloodbent has no control over their actions. They basically have become a puppet, making even the waterbenders find the technique to be horrible, and that's the reason why bloodbending is deemed illegal. When Hammer reveals the ability, Katara is shocked and doesn't want to be taught how to bloodbend, but she's forced into using it when Hammer ambushes Katara and her friends, before showcasing the devastating effects of bloodbending. Katara is then forced into a fucked up dilemma, which is to either use the forbidden technique and risk turning into someone that she hates, or watch her friends be tortured. This is when the unthinkable happens, and Katara bloodbends. The scene is difficult to watch because of the anguish and self-hate that Katara displays during the move. This isn't some satisfying power-up in the show, but it's her crossing a line, thereby making the scene so much more impactful. This is why bloodbending is terrifying, not just because it's a physically strong ability, but because of the moral sacrifice required to use it, forcing the user to battle their inner demons. But she just couldn't resist using it one more time, although all things considered is actually pretty justified. She and Zuko break onto a Fire Nation ship in search for her mother's murderer. Katara's bloody ready to go scorched earth. They make their way through the ship, and as soon as she sees someone she thinks might be her mother's murderer, she doesn't hesitate.
What's happening to me?
Zuko's expression says it all. Katara means business, and she's not here to hold back any punches. There wasn't any of the usual morality nonsense, just straight to action. Turns out that this isn't even the right guy. She could have just used her bloodbending to kill an innocent man. Well, scratch the innocent part, he's still a Fire Nation soldier after all. What makes this moment even more impactful is the fact that not long after, she meets the actual murderer. But he's so weak and pathetic that she can't even bring herself to do it. While Katara's forbidden power terrified opponents with the potential for torture, our next entry had a technique so dangerous that it could wipe a person from existence. If you watched all of the Kung Fu Panda movies, you'll remember one of the most memorable skills that the franchise has ever given us is the Wuxi finger hold, or as most people call it, the skadoosh. At first, this may seem utterly ridiculous because how is that supposed to be like the most feared technique? But when Po reveals its true nature, the laughter dies. The Wuxi finger hold is regarded as one of the most formidable techniques in the entire universe of Kung Fu Panda. When applied, it doesn't physically kill or destroy the body, but instead separates the soul from the physical form and sends the target into the spirit realm, where they're presumably trapped forever. Po mastering the Wuxi finger hold on his own makes it more legendary because it wasn't a taught technique. Tai Lung has spent years seeking the title of Dragon Warrior, but still gets taken completely by surprise when Po declares that he's mastered this ability. First time the Wuxi fingerhold is used creates a very infamous scene. During Po's fight with Tai Lung, Po has lost nearly everything, and the fate of the valley rests entirely on his shoulders. This fight is breathtaking, but the end of the fight comes as a complete surprise, because rather than use a physical power, Po uses the Wuxi fingerhold on Tai Lung. He puts his finger on his chin, makes a grin, and says one of the greatest lines in Kung Fu Panda history: skadoosh.
Skadoosh.
A large golden energy blast appears throughout the valley and Tai Lung vanishes. That moment became one of the most celebrated moments in animation. But the ability gains even more, meaning over the years, as Po faces his greatest enemy to date, Kai, a fighter who's defeated and assimilated countless masters, and even he proves too much for Po. His allies stand no chance as they fall, one after another, until Po has only his closest friends left. And this is when it's time to pull out all the stops, as Po puts the Wuxi fingerhold on himself in order to send both him and Kai into the spirit realm.
What's that?
Po!
Son! Skadoosh!
I'm still shocked thinking about how fucked up this choice was. It was already dangerous when used on enemies, but here Po is taking the fight into a dimension he can't possibly survive on his own, making it the ultimate selfless act. And that single moment cements the Wuxi fingerhold as an iconic power that appears only in the direst of circumstances. As dire as these techniques have been, the following hero's mastery of a power did not just push them, it broke them, making fans unable to forget it after it was revealed. Now, the abilities so far have one thing in common, which is the fact that the character chooses to use them. Maybe they don't want to because they know it's dangerous, but at the end of the day, it's still their decision. This character is different, because when this power appeared, there wasn't really a choice involved at all. This wasn't a special technique or some cool power-up, but instead, it was the physical manifestation of years of pain, trauma, guilt, and emotional exhaustion, finally reaching a breaking point. For most of Steven Universe, Steven is the heart of the show. He's optimistic no matter how bad things get. He always tries to see the good in people. In fact, one of Steven's greatest strengths is his ability to solve problems without violence. While other heroes become stronger by learning new attacks, Steven becomes stronger by understanding others, which is what makes his transformation into Monster Steven so f***ed up.
Well, I think you're pretty great.
This wasn't an enemy or a villain, but Steven himself. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to remember everything Steven had gone through. For years, he carried responsibilities and shit that no kid should ever have to carry as he helped save the world. He resolved conflicts that had lasted thousands of years, constantly put other people's needs ahead of his own, and whenever something traumatic happened, he simply kept moving forward. But trauma doesn't just disappear because you ignore it, but rather it builds and grows eventually. By the time Steven Universe Future begins, the audience starts seeing cracks in Steven's emotional state. He's anxious, stressed, and struggling to figure out who he is now that the world no longer needs saving. For the first time in his life, there isn't a giant crisis to focus on, which means he's finally forced to confront himself, and that's where things begin to fall apart. Throughout the series, Steven's emotional instability starts affecting his powers as they become stronger, more unpredictable, and far more dangerous.
She's the one who should be afraid. What's going on? What?
Every emotional outburst pushes him closer to a point of no return. Then comes the breaking point, as Steven becomes convinced that he's not the solution, but the problem itself. And once that belief takes hold, everything spirals out of control. His emotions overwhelm him completely. His powers react, and suddenly Steven transforms into a gigantic monster.
I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. I'm a monster!
The scene is absolutely heartbreaking because unlike many transformations in fiction, this one isn't empowering, but purely tragic. The audience isn't cheering, but rather they're terrified. Not because they believe Steven's evil, but because they understand what's happening. This monster isn't some separate creature, but rather represents Steven's emotional collapse. Every fear, every insecurity, and everything he's been carrying for years is bursting out at once. This is what makes Monster Steven feel like a forbidden ability. Not because it's technically forbidden, but because it's the one thing that Steven never wanted to become. What's even more emotional is how the situation gets resolved. He doesn't get defeated through force or through discovering some weakness, but instead, the people who care about Steven reach out to him. They remind him that he's loved, that he's not alone, and that he doesn't have to carry everything by himself. Little by little, Steven begins to return and the transformation ends. But the impact still remains because Monster Steven wasn't memorable due to flashy action, but rather because it turned emotional pain into something visible and impossible to ignore. For many fans, it became one of the most powerful moments in the entire franchise, but while Steven's forbidden transformation represented losing control, our next character experienced the exact opposite, because she finally gained a level of power so overwhelming that it felt almost impossible. A power connected to the very source of magic itself, and should never have been obtainable. A power that for most people remained completely out of reach. Right from the start of the Owl House, Luz doesn't feel like a typical fantasy protagonist. She's not magically gifted with incredible powers right at the beginning, nor is she royalty in disguise. She's not the strongest person in any room that she walks into, but rather she's just a human girl in a magical land, who, in the end, gets everything she earns purely through effort, persistence, creativity, and the refusal to give up, which is why so many people gravitated towards her. Luz wasn't special because she had overwhelming powers, but because she didn't give up, even without them. Eventually, though, she finds something determination just can't overcome: the Collector. More specifically, though, Emperor Bellows. By the end of the series, the stakes are so f***ing high that there's no choice. The whole of the Boiling Islands are in danger, and thousands of lives are at stake, with the opposition to Luz being practically overwhelming. Tragedy strikes as Luz is defeated, and for a moment, it seems as if everything is over. The hero has fallen, and the fight is lost. But then, something incredible happens. The spirit of the Titan calls to her, and she's granted a power which has never been seen before: the Titan form. The transformation alone is absolutely breathtaking, and from the visual cues alone, it's evident that this is no normal power-up. Her body is covered in glowy markings, her whole appearance dramatically changes, and she radiates an almost godly power that no one would expect from the human girl struggling for years to keep up. The power of the Titan form isn't what makes it so special, but what truly sets it apart is what symbolizes it. For the first series, Luz has been inspired by her environment, learning from witches, friends, and mentors. And in this final fight, all of her experiences come together, making this power-up feel less of a reward and more like the conclusion of her whole character arc. She has to have every bit of that power though, as Belos has become more dangerous than the Boiling Islands has ever witnessed. No mere mortal power and no average form of strength will be enough. The scale has become far too great for ordinary people. Because of that, she has no choice but to resort to a power granted to her by the very world itself. The battle is quite impossible, the most rewarding in the entire show, and not just for the fact that she wins, but for the fact that she's earned the right to even stand in the place she does. All of her learning, all of her friendships, and every last trial she endured all led to that very moment that makes the Titan form instantly become iconic. This isn't a power that she can simply activate at will, but one of those very rare, very specific powers that you don't even really need until everything seems lost. But if you think that that was exciting, just wait until we come to our last character, because contrary to all of the other characters on this list, she spent her entire life fighting the monster that she was trying to hide, fighting to prevent herself from becoming the very thing that she feared. And then one day, there was no choice. And when that monster was let loose upon the world, it created the single most emotionally charged arc in modern animation. As any fan of the Owl House knows, Ida is among the most powerful witches on the Boiling Isles. She's cocky and generally has an answer to any problem or situation you can think of, or maybe at least a clever solution. But underneath all of that confidence, Ida has been quietly fighting a hidden war, a war against the Owl Beast. Long before the start of the show, Ida had been cursed. At first, very annoying. Gradually became more and more painful until it became one of the defining and overwhelming forces in Ida's life. The Owl Beast isn't really just an upgrade. It's not just a really cool monster that Ida can call up when needed. In fact, throughout most of the series, Ida is actively fighting against the transformation.
I was wrong the whole time. That's no Snaggleback. That creature is...
Ida?
Because every single time Ida transforms, a part of her being is taken away and lost in the process. Every time she transforms, she is potentially a danger to everyone she loves, and maybe worst of all, every time the Owl Beast is activated, Ida is further losing control over herself, making her much less like herself, and even more unlike anything most fictional monster forms. Usually, with fictional monster transformations, viewers cheer at the prospect of their favourite characters gaining even more power. But with Ida's transformation, every viewer feels the emotional pain of the curse and the agonizing reality that this form is everything Ida has been trying to avoid for years. When under incredible stress, exhaustion, or desperation, Ida's Owl Beast form will consume her. Each time, it feels completely and totally agonizing to witness.
Oh my... I am the king of demons, okay? And as such, I demand you to barf my friends back up.
Not only is Ida herself at this point, everyone around her is terrified as well, and is totally unsure how much of Ida will be able to maintain control and how dangerously out of control she is really spiraling. And this is what makes Ida's monster form so deeply emotional. The Owl Beast is not an outside enemy. Instead, it's part of her, something that she wishes would just go away and never come back, but has no choice to keep contained at all times. Reaching her turning point, Ida realizes she can't defeat the Owl Beast in any traditional sense, but rather she has to understand the Owl Beast.
Now, I thought these were a way to fight you, but I think they're the reason we can stand here face to face. If we can't accept each other, this nightmare will never end. So what do you say? Truce?
This development brings us to perhaps the best part of the Owl House story, where rather than a curse that must be broken, the Owl Beast becomes a power that Ida learns to live with, coexist with, and accept. The idea itself is brilliant, because rather than having a cure for the curse, there's a way to integrate this new power so that she and the beast can live together peacefully. With this development, the Owl Beast transforms from something absolutely terrifying to something powerful but not scary anymore. Though whenever the beast emerges at any point, the audience always knows that something dire is about to happen.
Ugh, my head. Huh? Oh, jeez, did I turn again? Whoa.
The Owl Beast is something powerful. It's something Ida is afraid to ever use. And that's what makes this power and its manifestation so incredible to watch. It always feels so f***ing monumental when the beast emerges, and it makes sense that the audience understands what's going on. Since there's a cost, this power will always be amazing. In many ways, that statement applies to all of the powers in this video. Katara's frightening bloodbending made her question who she really is. The legendary Wuxi fingerhold was a last resort and came out in the worst possible situations. Steven's monster form was a physical representation of his years of trauma, and Luz's Titan form emerged during a world-ending catastrophe, and it was Ida's struggle that defined her whole life. These aren't normal powers, but they are an emergency button, and it's for sure one of the reasons that fans enjoy them so much. When the main character pulls their ultimate move, every other episode, it loses significance. When the ultimate move comes up very rarely, it becomes so much more impactful. If they're about to use something that can have truly dire consequences, then something must be wrong. It's the emotion connected to these great power usages that we remember, not just how many points each hit does. So what do you think? Which forbidden or special ability was the most powerful? Let us know in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on notifications to make sure you don't miss any more deep dives into the most powerful, dangerous, and unforgettable powers in fiction. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video. Cheerio!